When Buckingham Palace announced that Prince Andrew was giving back his royal and military titles, it marked the end of an era. But behind this royal decision was a storm that had been brewing for decades. One of the most explosive revelations came from Charlotte Briggs, a former maid who worked closely with the Duke of York. In an interview with the Daily Mail, Charlotte didn't hold back her emotions. "I don't give a toss what Prince Andrew feels," she said bluntly. "He is a horrible, nasty man." Her words carried the pain of someone who had seen the true face of royalty, a side hidden behind palace walls and public smiles. For years, people admired the charm of the Queen's second son, but according to Charlotte, the truth was much darker. She described him as lazy, rude, and often full of anger. What shocked people most was how he treated the staff who served him daily. Mistakes, even small ones, were met with shouting, insults, and humiliation. Charlotte remembered being reduced to tears over something as small as curtains not being closed properly. The once grand Buckingham Palace, for her, became a place of constant fear. Her story peeled back the royal curtain and showed a world where respect and kindness were replaced by arrogance and cruelty. The image of the polite prince crumbled as her words spread across the media, giving the world a glimpse into what life was really like behind those palace doors. Lot Briggs described her time working for Andrew as walking on eggshells. Nothing ever seemed good enough for him. One of his strangest obsessions was his collection of stuffed animals. Most people thought it was a sweet hobby, a grown man keeping his childhood toys. But for his staff, it was a daily nightmare. Prince Andrew reportedly had 72 teddy bears, plus a stuffed hippo and black panther, all of which had to be placed perfectly. The arrangement of these toys was not left to chance. There were laminated sheets showing exactly where each bear should go, which ones belonged at the front, which ones stood at the back, and where his two favorite bears were to be placed near his bed. Charlotte recalled being trained for an entire day on how to handle this ritual. A single mistake could trigger one of Andrew's famous tantrums. It wasn't just about the bears. His pajamas had to be folded perfectly, his bed pillows centered exactly, and his bathwater prepared at a precise temperature. If something was slightly off, there would be shouting. It was like serving a man who thought he was a god, Charlotte said. Compared to other royals like Prince Charles and Prince Edward, who treated their staff kindly, Andrew was in a league of his own, and not in a good way. Working for him meant living in constant fear of being yelled at, humiliated, or fired. For Charlotte, it became clear that this was not just about a bad temper. It was about power. Andrew seemed to enjoy making others feel small, as if their pain gave him satisfaction. Her job had turned into a daily test of endurance, where even a perfectly done task could still end in tears. Charlotte's story made people wonder, was Andrew always like this? The answer, it seems, is yes. Those who knew him as a child said his arrogance began early. Unlike his brother Charles, who was quiet and thoughtful, or his sister Anne, who was serious but kind, Andrew was different. Even as a little boy, he wanted attention and control. Palace staff from those years remembered a child who mocked the Queen's guards, trying to make them laugh or lose focus. When they stayed still, he grew angry and would try even harder to get a reaction. What seemed like childish mischief was actually a sign of something deeper, a belief that rules did not apply to him. His cruelty even extended to animals. There were reports of him kicking dogs and hitting horses with sticks just for fun. His behavior shocked palace workers so much that one day, after he hurt a horse, they pushed him into a pile of manure to teach him a lesson. Another time, a servant punched young Andrew after he had bullied and insulted him non-stop. The Queen reportedly refused to punish the servant, which shows just how unbearable Andrew's behavior had become. Even with his younger brother Edward, he was a bully, pushing him, stealing his food, and laughing when he cried. At school, his classmates gave him the nickname Baby Grumpling, mocking his constant temper tantrums. His cruelty, once tolerated as childish, grew sharper as he became older. He loved embarrassing people, especially women, making rude jokes and ordering people around. Staff began to fear him, describing him as a spoiled tyrant in the body of a prince. By the time he reached adulthood, his sense of superiority was already fixed, and so was his habit of treating people beneath him as if they didn't matter. By the late 1990s, the world began to see what palace insiders had long known. Prince Andrew's reputation was collapsing under the weight of his own arrogance. After his marriage to Sarah Ferguson ended, his public image grew worse. He was often seen with young models, earning him the nickname Randy Andy. He lived a life of luxury funded by taxpayer money, taking private jets for short trips and staying in expensive hotels. But what truly destroyed his image were his shady business dealings. Reports began to surface about his financial ties with suspicious figures. businessmen accused of corruption or worse. He was accused of arranging meetings for money, using his royal status for personal gain. The royal family tried to hide these stories, but the evidence piled up. While his brother Charles was trying to rebuild his image after Princess Diana's death, Andrew was becoming a global embarrassment. The press started calling him Air Miles Andy, mocking his greed and waste. Worse still, his friendship with Jeffrey Epstein, the convicted sex offender, turned a royal scandal into an international disgrace. Even after Epstein went to prison, Andrew continued to meet him. When photos of them walking together in New York appeared, the public was outraged. Other powerful men cut ties with Epstein, but Andrew called him a loyal friend. That decision would haunt him forever. From then on, everything he touched turned toxic. Charities refused to work with him. Universities removed his name from their programs. What began as whispers of bad behavior had now exploded into a full-blown royal crisis, one that even the Queen couldn't silence. In 2019, under pressure from the growing Epstein scandal, Prince Andrew agreed to a television interview that he hoped would clear his name. It did the opposite. During his now infamous BBC interview, he tried to deny all accusations made by Virginia Giuffre, a woman who said she was forced to have relations with him when she was just 17. Andrew claimed he never met her, even though a photo clearly showed him with his arm around her waist, with Ghislaine Maxwell smiling in the background. Experts confirmed the photo was real, but Andrew called it fake. His excuses quickly turned absurd. When asked about Virginia's claim that he had been sweating heavily while dancing with her, Andrew replied that he couldn't sweat because of a medical condition caused by war stress. The claim was so strange that it instantly turned him into a global joke. He also said that on the night he was accused of being with her, he had been at a Pizza Express in Woking with his daughter, a story so oddly specific that it became an internet meme overnight. But what angered people most wasn't his poor excuses. It was his complete lack of sympathy for Epstein's victims. He said staying with Epstein after his conviction had been convenient, as it allowed him to end their friendship in person. The tone-deaf statement shocked viewers. Instead of appearing innocent, Andrew came off as arrogant and out of touch. The backlash was swift. Within days, he was forced to step back from royal duties. His charities dropped him, the military stripped his titles, and his public life was effectively over. For the first time in modern history, a senior royal had been disgraced on live television. By 2022, Prince Andrew had settled the lawsuit with Virginia Giuffre, paying her a reported $12 million. The palace insisted it was not an admission of guilt, but the public didn't believe that. Many suspected the Queen helped pay to protect the royal family from further embarrassment. But the damage was done. When Prince Philip died, Andrew walked behind his siblings in silence, ignored by the crowd. At the Queen's funeral, he stood without a military uniform while his brothers wore theirs, a public display of his fall from grace. When King Charles took the throne, he made the decision official. Andrew was stripped of all remaining duties, honors, and royal privileges. Even his security was reduced. The once powerful Duke of York was now just another disgraced figure, living in the shadow of his past. During public events, he was often seen alone, walking a few steps behind the rest of the royal family, his face showing quiet anger and humiliation. Cameras captured every moment, the tension, the coldness, the isolation. At one Easter service, even his nieces and nephews ignored him. He had become a ghost within the family that once celebrated him. But while his royal connections faded, stories from his former staff kept coming out. More maids and valets revealed how cruel he had been. One said he made her run up flights of stairs to close curtains he could have easily closed himself. Another recalled how he shouted about bathwater temperatures or demanded that his shoelaces be pressed flat. Ticking time bomb. One wrong move from him could stain the entire royal legacy. During private meetings, William reportedly told his father he must never return to public life. Charles agreed. The two future kings knew the monarchy's survival depended on cutting off its weakest link. And so, even after the Queen's passing, Andrew found himself completely alone, loved by none, trusted by few, and watched by all. As time passed, the media turned Prince Andrew's story into a symbol of fallen privilege. Newspapers that once praised his bravery as a naval officer now mocked his arrogance and foolishness. Headlines like, "The Prince Who Couldn't Sweat," or "Air Miles Andy's Royal Meltdown" became daily reading. The once respected Duke became a subject of late-night jokes and internet memes. But the damage went beyond humiliation. It exposed how fragile the royal image truly is. The monarchy had survived wars, divorces, and scandals. But the Epstein connection brought a darkness unlike any other. For many, it proved that the royals were not untouchable. They were human, and some of them deeply flawed. The BBC interview became one of the most replayed and analyzed clips in British television history. Body language experts noted how Andrew avoided eye contact, fidgeted nervously, and often smiled at inappropriate moments, behavior that made him seem insincere. Psychologists commented that his tone revealed a man more concerned about his reputation than about the victim's suffering. Public trust in him evaporated overnight. Petitions called for him to lose his titles and even be removed from royal property. The once proud Duke of York had become an international punchline. What made it worse was his inability to accept responsibility. Instead of apologizing, he hid behind legal statements and royal silence. For the British people, known for their sense of fairness and humility, his arrogance was unforgivable. He wasn't just seen as guilty, he was seen as heartless. And that, more than anything, destroyed his standing forever. In the years following his downfall, Prince Andrew's life changed dramatically. Once surrounded by luxury and attention, he now lived in quiet isolation at the Royal Lodge near Windsor. The grand home that once hosted lavish parties became a prison of memories. Visitors were rare, and his phone barely rang. The few friends who stayed loyal to him said he spent his days walking the grounds alone or reading in silence. The public rarely saw him, except during family events where he appeared stiff and distant. Those close to him said he had become a shadow of his former self. Still proud, but deeply broken. His relationship with his daughters, Princess Beatrice and Princess Eugénie, remained one of the few bright spots. The two stood by their father, believing that family should always come first. But even they couldn't repair his public image. When Beatrice got married, Andrew was not allowed to appear in official photos released by the palace. For a man who once basked in the spotlight, being invisible was perhaps the harshest punishment of all. Behind closed doors, he still insisted he had done nothing wrong. But deep down, those who knew him said he was haunted by regret. Not for the pain he caused others, but for losing everything he thought he was born to have. The luxury, the respect, the status, gone in an instant. The same arrogance that once made him powerful had now made him powerless. Many wondered how Prince Andrew managed to escape criminal charges when others involved with Jeffrey Epstein faced court trials. The answer, critics say, lies in the influence of the crown. From the moment the scandal began, palace lawyers worked tirelessly to control the damage. Carefully worded statements, private settlements, and quiet meetings behind the scenes kept Andrew from facing open justice. When the FBI requested to interview him, the palace's legal team delayed and deflected. It became clear that even a disgraced prince was still shielded by royal privilege. This double standard angered the public and raised serious questions about fairness. If an ordinary man had been accused of the same crimes, would he have been protected so fiercely? Probably not. Activists demanded transparency, but Buckingham Palace refused to comment. The royal institution that prided itself on honor seemed more interested in survival than truth. For many, this was the final straw. Polls showed that public support for the monarchy dropped sharply after the Andrew scandal. Younger generations began questioning whether the royal family still deserved taxpayer funding. Even within the palace, whispers grew louder. Staff questioned how such behavior had been ignored for so long. Some believed that decades of privilege had created an environment where Andrew thought he could do anything without consequence. In the end, the silence that once protected him became the very thing that destroyed him. When truth is hidden too long, it always finds a way to rise. And when it did, it took his reputation with it. Prince Andrew's story is more than just royal gossip. It's a warning about what happens when power and accountability drift too far apart. From his childhood mischief to his adult arrogance, every step of his journey showed how privilege can blind people to basic decency. He grew up in a world where rules didn't apply to him, where mistakes were covered up and bad behavior was excused as royal charm. But real life eventually caught up. His downfall revealed that titles, money, and connections cannot save